I do not think LEGO Star Wars 2, the original trilogy, is as good as the first game. This doesn't mean it can't be your favorite, and of course this isn't a slight against Trevorrell's Tales, who I believe have done an amazing job in delivering a sequel of this scale in 2006, just a year after their previous project. The game was released on more platforms to boot. In addition to PC, PlayStation 2, Xbox and GameCube, we got it on Xbox 360 and even PlayStation Portable, which, unlike other handheld versions that I'm not going to discuss in this particular review, is the same game as on consoles. Well, almost. Obviously, there's differences in terms of graphics and performance, but also, instead of the bounty hunter missions, it has several boss fights ported from LEGO Star Wars 1, and every level in the game gets an unavailable on other platforms challenge mode, where you have to find 10 blue mini-kits in a limited amount of time. Both exist primarily to receive LEGO Star Wars 1 characters for free play, a function that on practically all other platforms is an extra you can activate, which lets you use the save file from the previous game for the same purpose. And on the Xbox 360 version, you had to pay $1 for a DLC with these characters. Capitalism. As for the game itself, I think if anything, LEGO Star Wars 2 showcases just how strong the loop and concept of the original title was, and how important is charm and game feel in the context of that loop. Because outside of those aspects, I personally don't see why so many reviews claim LEGO Star Wars 2 is a strong improvement over its predecessor. Well, maybe the bias against prequels has something to do with it. It's a question we'll never be able to answer now, but I personally couldn't help but wonder, had the design principles in LEGO Star Wars 1 and 2 stayed the same, but they swapped movies, would LEGO Star Wars 2 become as big of a critical darling? Especially considering how there was barely any review that didn't try to throw shade at the prequels, mentioning how finally it's the good movies that got the LEGO game treatment. You might also wonder about this when you hear my arguments, so let's start with the differences in how this game's character and gameplay design is handled. LEGO Star Wars 1 has channeled its mechanical simplicity into its biggest strength. It had only 3 action buttons: attack, jump and special, and everyone had at most one ability attached to that button. It could have different variations depending on if you're tapping it multiple times or holding, like the various offensive and defensive lightsaber behaviors, but it was still just a single ability or item at its core. Add to it that every character had at most one passive feature, and this became a recipe resulting in 3 important principles. First, such a setup ensures that every core character class is always relevant. Even those that are good at literally only a single thing like protocol droids, you still need one and can't just replace them. Second, unless the minifigure doesn't have any abilities, it can't be totally useless. Battle droids can't jump? Yeah, but they have a passive disguise feature that not only prevents you from getting targeted, but also gathers all other droids around for an easy kill. Jango Fett has 2 blasters? Yeah, but the rate of fire is slower, so you might still want a traditional blaster character. Which leads us to the third principle, that within the same type of minifigures, there's nobody that's strictly better, so you're free to just base your choice off personal preferences. Do you want to play as Padme or a clone trooper? Up to you, the differences are in aesthetics. These principles are important since not only do they make your collection matter and enhance the sense of discovery, they greatly influence the level design of both the story and free-play modes. All things I have discussed in detail in my LEGO Star Wars 1 review, but I'm recapping here because LEGO Star Wars 2 makes a number of changes and additions to the core gameplay that sort of makes everything crumble down. That would be adding more features and abilities. Which is great, in theory. What's less than ideal though is how the game disproportionately distributes multiple ones between minifigures. And what makes everything a bit more annoying is that the amount of buttons used remains the same, but now there's multiple possible actions attached to them. For example, there is a new build-in function now. Its implementation is great. The brick jumping that signifies they can be combined is very visible, and the actual act of building is incredibly satisfying thanks to the animation and sound design. Absolutely everyone except droids can build from Lego bricks. In isolation, this sounds like a good thing. Now building is not relegated to only Force users. But this not only drastically changes the level design principles, which we'll take a look at later, but also adds conflict within the control scheme. You might want to use the Force at an enemy and think it's going to be fine since there is a marker right on them, but the character will prioritize building instead. The new Bounty Hunter class can throw thermal detonators, again using the same button as building Lego. I can't tell you how many times I threw bombs without intending to because the character wasn't close enough for the building trigger. Similar thing would happen with the new lever type of objects, which also can be used by everyone except droids. You can see how characters like C-3PO and R2-D2 suddenly start to become increasingly more useless, especially once you get some droid bounty hunters that besides all their own class features can activate both protocol and astromech panels. Though as droids, they too don't have access to another new feature everyone else has, pushing objects. Then we have all the changes to blaster characters. First, there is a new melee function now. When a blaster minifigure is close enough to an enemy, instead of shooting, they play a close quarters attack. This is a great opportunity to showcase personality with different animations, like how Lando knows Kung Fu, while Chewbacca can rip off arms from stormtroopers. But gameplay-wise, these melee attacks miss a very important function the Jedi have. They don't automatically deflect shots during the animation. Makes sense, they don't have a lightsaber. But you can't cancel a melee animation, meaning you're at risk of dying and losing studs whenever it is activated. And the range is very generous, which combined with how auto-aim works on friendlies as well, can lead to situations where enemies get free hits. This also made an Easter egg particularly more annoying than it should have been. Lando has a special animation when hitting Leia. He's hitting on her, recreating the kiss in the hand scene from Empire Strikes Back. It's a very nice detail. But it's also impossible not to hate it when Lando does this instead of shooting stormtroopers, and no button you press cancels the particularly long animation. The sensitivity of melee animation activation for blaster characters is ironic, considering how Jedi for some reason can't hit for shit in this game. There's a lot of instances when even those imported from LEGO Star Wars 1 don't damage enemies when a lightsaber literally goes through them. It's very annoying. Another new blaster minifigure feature is the dive, a replacement for double jump which doesn't boost height but can make the characters jump farther. Plus, dodging was added. No longer you have to jump and run to avoid blaster fire. In fact, you shouldn't, because dodging works only when you stand still and press the attack button. And after the dodge, you automatically aim at the direction of the attacker. So the best way to tackle absolutely any firefight becomes to just stand still and repeatedly tap to shoot, and the game will handle everything itself about 90% of the time. Sometimes you have to reposition yourself, and other times there's too many shots to dodge. To compensate for this feature, LEGO Star Wars 2 often pits you against far higher enemy counts, similar to what the beach section from Defense of Kashyyyk in the first game did. And no, AI is not any more useful in combat than it was in the last game. While there's all these new blaster character features, half of the minifigures from the class absolutely suck. Because there's tiers now, ranging from main characters who have all or almost all of the new features, and those who have none or almost none. I would love nothing more than to go through most of LEGO Star Wars 2 free play mode as the Speedo Stormtrooper, who literally has only underwear and helmet on him. But very often it's impossible because action sequences account for dodging, and Stormtroopers can't dodge. They don't have auto-aim radius as wide as the hero characters either, and to add insult to injury, when jump diving they flop on their belly. Funny the first time you see it. Aggravated when trying to play for a longer period of time. and they don't even have a consistently working disguise feature like battle droids did. Half of the time enemy stormtroopers will attack you instantly, and the other half, any action other than walking will trigger a fight. Sure, they're useful for opening Imperial security locks. So are the much more capable and closer to Han Solo in functionality Imperial officers. And Darth Vader too. In the first game, because characters wouldn't get stacked with attacks, abilities and passives, most of the time if they had some sort of disadvantage, they also had an advantage to balance that out. But now that's not the case. A bunch of minifigures are actively less desirable than others. This in turn downplays the element of discovery. It's not fully missing and there's still fun things to mess around with. Using Force Lightning on others as the Emperor? That's cool. Dancing as Bikini Leia? Sure, why not? But overall, outside of some animations there and there, you rarely ever discover something that actually influences gameplay like you would in the first LEGO Star Wars. And in a way, it's understandable. After all, how could LEGO Star Wars 2 really add differentiation when practically absolutely everything there is to the game is stacked onto the core cast of characters, transforming the rest in more or less simply keys at best? And this has greatly influenced the level design. When discussing the levels from LEGO Star Wars 1, I mentioned how its biggest strength is variety. Beyond the overall principle to minimize reusing any specific combinations of elements for different challenges as much as possible, this is mainly a result of LEGO Star Wars 1 characters being very limited in their nature, and therefore different combinations of characters in story mode naturally require different design solutions. In LEGO Star Wars 2, because your core cast is so versatile, even when you do have varying character classes, level design principles stay mostly the same. Well, that, and to be honest, the game doesn't attempt to follow the use a challenge only once principle. Maybe that's caused by it deliberately going for far longer levels. In LEGO Star Wars 1, the standard level length in conditions when you try to interact with everything on the way is about 10-15 minutes. Longest is 20-25. In LEGO Star Wars 2, with the same conditions, 20-25 minutes is the average. And no, you can't save any sort of progress mid-level, and functionality to keep collectibles on exiting after finding them when replaying a mission also doesn't exist. Suffice it to say, the levels can drag out for longer than they should. It's already an issue that LEGO Star Wars 2 levels don't differentiate themselves enough conceptually, even though they certainly do vary the environments. LEGO Star Wars 1 had a common direction for every level being separated into interchanging linear, corridorish and more open parts, with some protruding optional pathways there and there, but it made sure to have a different concept for each one. There's a level that's at first only about exploration and then becomes a chase and boss battle. One that's about going through a trap and platforming gauntlet in a droid factory. Another that's about two friends fighting each other while also temporarily helping one another from time to time to survive. A mission that's about finding pathways for the absolutely massive team consisting of almost every character class. A level that's just a boss battle arena. A level that's actually an arena. These are not just different environments. The underlying foundation for how a level is played varies as well. That's simply not the case for the majority of LEGO Star Wars 2 levels. Most of them play the general structure exceptionally straight. A set of corridors with some destructibles and collectibles on the side, with some larger areas every now and then, which you have to traverse by using certain characters as keys. Then it's the same set of corridors, only these corridors are now desert canyons, but you're still just on a linear pathway to traverse to the end to use certain characters as keys. Then again, a set of corridors only in a city environment, and you're in a mostly linear pathway with some more open areas there and there again, and you need to use certain characters as keys. Then again, a set of corridors in a space station, and you need to use certain characters as keys to progress. And again, and again. There's a very small amount of levels that actually differ conceptually. One of them would be Dagobah, for example, where you have to learn to use the Force as Luke and even carry Yoda on your back for a while. This level has a distinctly different feel. But then it's arguable whether that's enough when there's just a lot of the same things you do in every level over and over and over again. I'm serious. Build objects, pull levers, push blocks to their correct position. Build objects, pull levers, push blocks to their correct position. Build objects, pull levers, push blocks to their correct position. Build objects, pull levers, push blocks to their correct position. Build objects, pull levers, push blocks to their correct position. Build objects, pull levers, push blocks to their correct position. Build objects, pull levers, push blocks to their correct position. Build objects, pull levers, push blocks to their correct position. Build objects, pull levers, push blocks to their correct position. Build objects, pull levers, push blocks to their correct position. Of course, there are basic elements that have to be reused, but moderation and combinations in a game like this matters. They're not in LEGO Star Wars 2, but do you know how many mandatory instances of blaster characters having to shoot target reticles there were in the first game? 5 in the entire game. Obviously, there's some more for the optional stuff. 8 more to be exact. One time you have to shoot all of them in a row while riding up an elevator before they turn off. Another you need to bring a blaster character to open a panel for an astromech droid. Context of how a gameplay element is used matters to make it not feel repetitive. Or the ease of use. Sure, LEGO Star Wars 1 had tons of grapple points all over the place because using them is the core ability of blaster characters, but it's really straightforward and not time-consuming to do that, and there's only a couple in the entire game that have to be specifically revealed by destroying one object or another. In LEGO Star Wars 2, you know what you have to do very often? Build grapple points. You build a grapple point here, you build one here, and another here, and here, and here, and here. In some cases you need to destroy some objects to reveal bricks so you could build a grapple point. Obviously, doing this every now and then is fine, but when a solution like this is utilized so often, this stops being potential adding depth to a feature and becomes just busy work. LEGO Star Wars 2 also has a tendency to run good ideas into the ground by reutilizing them over and over again for the sake of adding content. Oh, you need to get a droid across a chasm so they could activate a panel. How about a crane? That's great! You can also use a crane, or a crane in the form of a magnet. There's a wall or big object you need to destroy. Maybe you can build and mount a turret. Or build and mount a turret. How about building and mounting a turret? Maybe you'd like to build and mount a turret, just saying. The worst is when these things repeat over and over in the same level. Like in Rescue the Princess from Episode 4, there are Stormtrooper helmet dispensers which allow you to get past Imperial camera checkpoints. But if you get hit at least once, you lose the helmet. And while it's pretty straightforward to dodge, since the game loves to send constantly respawning enemies at you, not just in general, but in these particular sections especially, it's highly likely that you might get hit once or twice. So we get a scenario where you have to get from a helmet dispenser to a camera without getting hit. Okay, fair enough. But then there's another scenario like that. Okay, and then there's another scenario like that, though this one leads to an optional sauna room with a double score zone. Okay, well the next level is about escaping the Death Star. Surely there's going to be something else. Oh, and there's a helmet dispenser that you need to use and get to a security camera without getting hit. And then shortly after that you have another helmet dispenser to do the same thing, to progress. And immediately after, there's one more. And speaking of repeating challenges, one of the new features in LEGO Star Wars 2 is the ability to ride vehicles or creatures in levels. To be honest, I think overall that's a fairly underutilized mechanic. Most of the time, something you can ride is available only within the limited area you find the vehicle or animal in, so there's really not much you can do, especially considering that usually these are just some optional objects. But level 5 of episode 4 does try to make use of vehicles in a puzzle scenario by having you ride a very unruly one over 5 buttons in a row. It's pretty annoying. But you know what? If it were LEGO Star Wars 1, this would be the only place where we'd see this kind of challenge and forget about it after if we dislike it. But this is LEGO Star Wars 2, and it can't help but to utilize the exact same setup at the end of the very same level. Speaking of vehicles, LEGO Star Wars 2 has absolutely redefined purely vehicle-focused levels, and they're bad. Really, really bad. The vehicle mechanics themselves are actually cool. There's a very nice feeling of momentum, switching direction 180 degrees is satisfying, and I can understand the desire to transform vehicle levels from auto-scrollers into closer to the core mechanics explorable levels where you can use various vehicle sets to play. Sounds like a perfect opportunity to use the minikits in free play mode as well, right? LEGO Star Wars 2 agrees. Partially. You can play as your minikits only in special bonus minikit vehicle levels, not the standard ones. That's weird. But anyway, if the mechanics are fine, what's wrong with the vehicle levels? 2 words. Proton torpedoes. Here's what you do in the assault on the Death Star level in episode 4. You pick up a proton torpedo from a dispenser and you send it onto a target. It'll fly in the weirdest, most inefficient way possible, by the way. Now you can progress. After that, you have a wall protected by a shield that's held active by 4 proton torpedo targets. Luckily, you can carry multiple proton torpedoes. Unluckily, unless you play as the TIE Bomber in free play or have the unlimited proton torpedo extra bought and turned on, the maximum amount you can carry is 3. So you can't destroy 4 targets without backtracking at least once. Okay, that's done. What's the next step of the level? Well, now there's 2 dispensers and 8 targets. Oh my god. That's a lot of freaking torpedo carrying. Well, surely there's no way this can be escalated any further and something else has to follow. I guess? Because the next area has 8 more torpedo targets and only 1 dispenser. Fucking hell, why this is not an auto-scroller? That would be much more fun. After this, you finally get a little bit of a trench run sequence, the best part of this level and the only good one to be honest, and you get to a section where you have to destroy 12 turrets before you can lob one final proton torpedo into the Death Star exhaust port. LEGO Star Wars 2 gets real mileage out of proton torpedoes. The Falcon flight level, recreating the Episode 5 sequence of Millennium Falcon escaping through an asteroid field, starts with a twist. You have to destroy turrets on Star Destroyers to help the rebel ships escape. This is a trick to make you think there's not going to be any proton torpedoing in this level. Oh, but there will be. Once you finish that little segment and get to the actual asteroid field, you have to destroy asteroids to get proton torpedoes to free up with them a path through an asteroid. And again, all the rebels have 4 proton torpedo targets and you can carry only 3. You then have to destroy more asteroids to get proton torpedoes to free up a path through a bigger asteroid. And once more after that. In the next segment, you have to destroy even more asteroids to get more proton torpedoes to destroy a really big asteroid blocking your path on a single axis of a 3-dimensional space. And do you know what you need to do in the Episode 6 space battle over Endor? That's right, proton torpedoes. This time you get them from TIE Bombers and lob at Star Destroyers. And then later on at various Death Star innards. The only LEGO Star Wars 2 vehicle level that doesn't ask you to launch an ungodly amount of proton torpedoes is the Battle of Hoth mission, and that's only because it asks you to roll with your cable an ungodly amount of bombs, while probe droids will actively try to prevent you from doing so. In this level, you have to roll bombs, and then roll more bombs, to roll more bombs. Will you participate in the iconic act of using Tau cables to bring AT-ATs down? Of course you will, it's a Hoth battle level. But also, you will need to perform the less iconic act of rolling bombs to destroy them after. What's worse than this is the inclusion of bomb rolling segments in free play of other vehicle levels. I've done a whole lot of complaining now, but I don't want you to think that LEGO Star Wars 2 levels are devoid of actually cool stuff. In fact, there is a significant amount of them. Finding a place where you can sell your land speeder in Mos Eisley to get tons of studs? That's cool, especially considering that you have to open up 2 obstacles to give way to the speeder, one of the better uses of the game's new ability to ride vehicles in levels, at least because it involves going through multiple areas. The Vader boss battle stages in Cloud City Trap are really nice, though I find it weird that only one of them has protection against the still most overpowered double jump lightsaber attack. Even Palpatine is not protected against that attack, though the boss battle level with him is not too shabby either. And there are levels that I just call overall pretty good, like the Battle of Endor. It actually starts out nice with exploration of the Ewok village, and what's particularly fascinating about this part is that it's one of the few places where the game doesn't constantly send enemies at you. You can't normally explore Dagobah without bats swarming towards you over and over and over again. Jundland Wastes regularly has sections with constantly respawning Tusken Raiders, but a lot of the Ewok village part is actually really peaceful, which is nice. You then get down into the actual forest to the battle part and have to use the abilities of various party members to progress, before reaching a catapult which clears the way towards the main conflict point near the Death Star shield generator bunker. There you can ride an AT-ST, which would feel really special if the game hadn't used AT-STs repeatedly as rideable vehicles in previous levels, including ones where you'd not expect them at all, like Mos Eisley. And it all ends in the bunker itself, where in various rooms you have to puzzle your way through, get into some of the actually good uses of levers in the game, unlocking the place where you can set some bombs to finish the mission. But this level comes straight after Speeder Showdown, which probably rivals Defense of Kashyyyk in how much I dislike it. Look, at first it seems straightforward enough. You start on the ground, get to a speeder, and have to go through a circular track while destroying some scout troopers on the way. After that, you land in a ground section where you need to take control of an AT-ST to destroy a shield generator. That's nice! You then have to go through the same circular track on a speeder and destroy more scout troopers. You then land in another section where you need to take control of an AT-ST to destroy a shield generator. You then have to go through the same circular track on a speeder and destroy more scout troopers. You then land in another section where you need to take control of an AT-ST to destroy a shield generator. You then have to go through the same circular track on a speeder and destroy more scout troopers. You then land in another section where you need to take control of an AT-ST to destroy a shield generator. After which, you actually get to a landing platform where you can take control of an AT-AT, albeit very limited, to destroy everything and end the level. And look, the AT-ST sections try to be varied and stuff and make you get an AT-ST in different ways, but it's still all about navigating these very large for your little minifigures areas to find your way into those chicken walkers several times, to destroy shield generators several times. A lot of really nice stuff gets diluted by repetitiveness because LEGO Star Wars 2 is hell-bent on providing more content, even though it can't sustain it mechanically. This also severely affects free play. Because the game tries to make the main levels bigger, it doesn't have enough resources to allocate towards purely free play specific rooms. One of the best things in LEGO Star Wars 1 was to discover all the secret areas every level had. Even very small levels like General Grievous still had something you could see only in free play. LEGO Star Wars 2 has some amazing examples of free play specific areas. Like in the level 4 of episode 4, there is a segment where you and Obi-Wan go separate ways, and you can see Obi-Wan in the background discover a mini-kit which you can't reach. In free play, you can actually go through Obi-Wan's path and find a bunch of collectibles there. It's really cool. But most mini-kits don't require you to get into any optional rooms or even complete additional challenges within existing ones. No, the game just uses character powers as keys, sometimes literal, to open up little alcoves or storage rooms with mini-kits. Trust me, LEGO Star Wars 2 does that a lot. It also really likes to use the uncover X objects by destroying staff gold for mini-kits. Gets old pretty quick since you're destroying everything for studs anyways, so why connect mini-kits to that? And again, even some more elaborate solutions are reused pretty much exactly the same way. In Battle of Andor, there's a mini-kit you can only get with a Jedi, since you need to move a platform with the Force, jump to it and then on another platform, and then use the Force again to return the first platform to where it was so you could reach a mini-kit. I got that mini-kit and told myself, you know what? This is an assuming, but still a nice little mini-kit challenge. I like it. And I guess the game liked it too, because later in the same level there's the exact same type of challenge to get another mini-kit. And sometimes there are optional rooms but with barely anything to do, clearly left unfinished, like the snow segment with Tauntauns in the Escape from Hoth level. When you first get there, you get giddy because you imagine all the things that you might be able to do once you get outside after receiving the mini-kit. And after you do, well, you can ride Tauntauns around a bit. That's it. You can't even destroy the trees. Disappointing. What's even more disappointing is how LEGO Star Wars 2, in its goal to make it feel like there's so many things to do, tries to make you go through the same often repetitive content not once, not twice, but at least 3 and even up to 4 or 5 times depending on how you count. The first LEGO Star Wars pushed you to replay every level at least once with its structure. Because of the level length and amount of conceptual variety, that never felt daunting. With LEGO Star Wars 2 though, very often I'd see how the game wants me to replay a level, and I'd have to ask myself, do I really want to do it now? And this is not just because of increased level length and their often repetitive design, but also due to how many times LEGO Star Wars 2 wants you to replay something. It does have one very smart addition to the overall loop, and that's the gold bricks, which you get for pretty much everything in the game. Finish a level? Gold brick. Get all mini-kits? Gold brick. This is very cool because gold bricks can be used to potentially unlock cool stuff. But LEGO Star Wars 2 goes a bit overboard with how much it wants you to replay things to get gold bricks. Let's take the True Jedi meter. In the previous game it didn't have a name, it was just a meter to get super kit pieces, which don't exist as a concept here. Instead it's just a title that rewards gold bricks. In the first game it didn't matter whether you filled up the meter in story or free play mode. Here it does, because there's 2 separate True Jedi meters, one for each mode. Happened to not get all studs required in story mode once? Too bad, you'll have to replay it at least once more in story mode specifically to get the True Jedi status there. Then, most of the extras you can't just buy like you could in LEGO Star Wars 1. You need to first find the special red power bricks in levels. On one hand, that's a neat idea. On another, happen to miss a red brick in your playthroughs? That's one more time you have to replay the whole level again. And the thing is, the considerably high pricing of everything in this game introduces a pretty weird side effect, in that if you don't properly strategize and account for red bricks and their price, which you have no knowledge of before you unlock their purchase, you can transform the process of 100% in the game into a particular grind. There are actually several stud multipliers that clearly exist to help with stuff like gaining True Jedi meter, as well as buying the more expensive figures like the Force Ghosts. However, while these extras also multiply with one another when all are active at once, and thus can potentially give a ridiculous bonus of times 3840 to every stat piece you collect, they're also incredibly expensive. By the time I saw that it takes 2 million studs to just get a ×2 multiplier, I've already spent almost that amount on other minifigures and extras. And here's the thing, if you want to see the completion percentage near the bartender, another new addition by the way, right 100%, you need to get everything, including all stud multipliers, which don't work on studs you get for gold bricks, but do work on studs you get for completing minikits. But I also had almost all minikits collected by the point I personally got my first multiplier, so let's just say, unless you plan all your purchasing decisions beforehand to make sure everything is as efficient as possible, prepare for a big grind. And it's an aspect that simply didn't exist in LEGO Star Wars 1. For one, there was no percentage completion shown anywhere. You don't want all extras, just all minifigures for example? That's fine. And then, it didn't matter in what order you purchased things there, since there were no red bricks or multipliers. It wouldn't affect how many studs you need to get or how much you need to replay. But no, in LEGO Star Wars 2, if you want a comfortable 100% completion, you have to prioritize stud multiplier purchase, which means you'd better minimize any other spendings beforehand. Of course, there are bonus levels where your goal is to collect 1,000,000 studs with multipliers disabled, but you don't get to keep any of them. On one hand, it's sort of understandable for the episode-related ones you have to do in 5 minutes, the character and mini-kit bonus levels where the goal is to destroy as much stuff as possible, as quickly as possible. But then there's a special bonus level you get for collecting 60 gold bricks, Lego City. To get 1,000,000 studs there, you have to spend a lot of time doing a bunch of stuff. Blowing up buildings, riding various vehicles, up to 20 minutes. It's a nice bonus level, but I don't know why it wouldn't be okay to keep the stats from there, given the fact that you can't use multiplier extras, and 1,000,000 wouldn't be enough to purchase all extras anyway. To get absolutely all the gold bricks though, you have to complete even more bonuses. Like the Bounty Hunter missions, where a bunch of Bounty Hunter characters are put in a segment of a level to find one of the rebel heroes to capture, and you have only several minutes to do that. On one hand, it's a nice sort of mini speedrunning idea for a mode, on another, there's not enough explorative elements in the level to make finding the targets interesting enough, with a couple of cute exceptions. But it's still more interesting than the last type of bonus content, Super Story. It's a mode where you have to complete all story missions of an episode one after another in a single go with all extras disabled and one of 2 requirements complete, either getting more than 100,000 studs or completing all levels in less than an hour, which is more than possible if you ignore optional stuff and destroying everything. But it's like, what's the point of having this as an actual feature in the game? To reward for going through the same story mode again, only faster. It's not like you need to take advantage of mechanical knowledge or there's shortcuts you can discover to help. And what do you get in the end for spending all this time to finally get all 99 gold bricks? You get a fountain of unlimited studs. Which is actually pretty useful in the case where you don't have enough, so you can just spend some time grinding them without actually going through levels, which in a way is faster. But then if you already have everything, you won't have anything to spend studs on. Obviously, you don't need to go for 100% completion if you don't want to, but the game's structure and UI actively pushes for it, and in comparison to LEGO Star Wars 1, doing everything feels much more daunting. And yet, with all that being said, I can't claim it was absolutely unenjoyable to go through all that process. And the reason would be that, for all its flaws, there is one aspect where LEGO Star Wars 2 is actually much stronger than the first game. I'm talking about its insane amount of charm. There's only one shot I have to show you so you would understand why LEGO Star Wars 2 can be enjoyable. Yes, that's an AT-AT with fake disguise glasses and mustache. Okay, that is a purchasable extra at work, but LEGO Star Wars 2 oozes charm in absolutely every of its elements. It takes the best lessons from LEGO Star Wars 1 in terms of humor and expands upon them. While there are some awkward moments there and there still, there's so many actually funny and memorable handling of various scenes from the original trilogy. Here's for example the "these are not the droids you're looking for" moment. Classic. Or how about the scene depicting Darth Vader's death that plays the tragic moment straight and then goes for an unexpected dark humor twist. There is even humor that plays a bit with the soundtrack. Just for reference, here is the original scene that will be recreated.
Kurs Nummer!
And here's its LEGO recreation. To be honest, I think the moment with the lightsaber getting in the hands of the skiff guard is overkill, but the acrobatics that just keep going is absolute gold. And that's not to mention all the little humor in various animations. For example, when Darth Vader chokes stormtroopers, he holds them upside down by their leg. When Chewbacca uses stormtrooper helmets, they barely fit on his head. Gamorreans can't help but play on their axe when they hear rock music, and if you happen to be not aware, axe is a slang for guitar. A very cool pun. Han Solo rides creatures backwards. There's a room where you can open a ship's hatchport to send Imperials straight into space. Here's some stormtroopers washing windows. Here's why you should wear a seatbelt in Star Wars fake space physics. And here's how Vader tells Luke he is his father. Now, to be honest, I never found that last one to be particularly hilarious, but I have to admit it's a creative way to recreate a plot point that's very difficult to say without words. The question of course then is, can I keep going? And the answer to that would be, you bet I can! Here's the Imperial spy minifigure trying to be a spy during the Rebel celebration ceremony, though the moment when they focus on capturing him is overkill again, but noticing the spy in the crowd is funny. Here we use a tractor to plow some carrots on Endor. And speaking of Endor, here's a little bonus feature that transforms Ewoks into the most destructive force in the galaxy. You can also give your droids an incredibly powerful self-destruct mode. You won't lose studs when dying this way, which is good, but even if this weren't the case, watching C-3PO destroy the greatest threat in the galaxy is still satisfying. And even with the amount of time spent on all these examples, should we also include other really cool moments or details I mentioned there and there in the previous parts of the video, that still would be only touching the surface of just how much charm there actually is in LEGO Star Wars 2. This is why, despite being annoyed, frustrated, disappointed, and sometimes absolutely raging, I still have that 100% number at the bartender in the cantina. And I will never go for that number in this game again. And this seems like a good moment to summarize everything by scoring LEGO Star Wars 2, the original trilogy, with my Stasocritic rating system. Stasocritic consists of 5 different categories of various weights. Each category has 11 scores from 0 to 10 with their own criteria. The first category is design with the biggest weight, that of 4, since how a game is built and structured is what defines its quality the most. I will assign a 4. LEGO Star Wars 2 is shallow, repetitive, and honestly overstays its welcome. Even though the levels differ in environments, a lot of them don't differ in style, with you doing the same things over and over again. Challenges that could be interesting once or twice are reused far more often than they should have been. Vehicle missions are pretty bad. Character collection is not as relevant due to some clearly being just better, and a lot of bonus content required for 100% completion is disappointing. But LEGO Star Wars 2 is also not without its merits. Just like with the first game, there's a bunch of really creative design solutions, fun details, exciting moments to discover. It's just that they're hidden among all this other stuff that's kinda disappointing. Then we have emotions, a category with a weight of 3. While it's entirely subjective, it's absolutely important because personal enjoyment matters a lot. You can love flawed titles or hate exceptionally polished ones. Here I will assign a 3. In the LEGO Star Wars 1 review, I told you how back in the day I would replay that game multiple times. But in 2006, I played through LEGO Star Wars 2 only once. I 100%ed it, but I would never replay it. I didn't pay much attention to that fact before I actually replayed the game again for this video, and it's probably going to be the last time I will ever think about replaying LEGO Star Wars 2 specifically. I don't want to go through this experience again. But there were moments I found very enjoyable and fun, which is why even in this playthrough I had the desire to see everything the game has to offer and make sure I don't miss out on all the great stuff, even though it's mixed in with everything else that's not particularly great. The next category is cohesion. It has a weight of 2 and it's all about how well different aspects of a game are connected together. I will assign a 7. The strength of LEGO Star Wars 1 was that a lot of characters didn't just have different animations for their actions, but they felt different enough to play as, retaining their personality through mechanics as well. LEGO Star Wars 2 sort of lacks that. It has a lot of personality in animations, hence why I think this score is appropriate, but mechanically a lot of minifigures feel the same. That's because so many abilities are shared between them and rarely you find something unique in terms of actual gameplay. But still, overall, there's enough done through the LEGO abstractions that you still feel this is a Star Wars title. Which leads us to context, a category that's all about story, world building and so on. I will assign a 7. This is undoubtedly an aspect LEGO Star Wars 2 is stronger in than LEGO Star Wars 1. Not because of the source material, since it's not like you will get much of it if you haven't watched the movies anyway. Again, just like the first game, this doesn't work that well as an adaptation. But some exceptions aside, LEGO Star Wars 2 has leaned into what worked best in the first game in terms of humor, charm, great little details, and comparatively speaking has pushed it into overdrive, so it's really solid as a comedic experience. Another category that is a strict improvement is aesthetics, which this time will get a 10. Not only does LEGO Star Wars 2 have far less aspects that feel unpolished in this regard than the first title, but it also has learned things like how to incorporate mumbles for effective comedy, how to use music for a greater emotional and once again comedic effect, how to make locations feel even more authentic to the movies than in the first title, while still making sure that all LEGO pieces stand out as they should, while not looking out of place. And hey, for what it's worth, my most hated LEGO hairpiece is barely shown, so that's a nice bonus too. So with all scores and their weights taken into account, LEGO Star Wars 2, the original trilogy, gets a final Stasocritic rating of 51. Now, in case you're not familiar with my system, I have to mention that thanks to the criteria, the entire range of scores from 0 to 100 is actually used, and most enjoyable titles out there will land between 50 and 70, since it's really difficult to get to both the lower and higher extremes of the score system. And 51 means that the game is Alright, if you care more about charm and humor than anything else, then for sure you will enjoy LEGO Star Wars 2. And I suppose many already do for that reason. But personally speaking, I can't say that's enough to call it a better sequel, and would recommend it only if you're willing to accept the game's mechanical and design flaws to experience its finer atmospheric details. So, what do you think about the hypothetical question of LEGO Star Wars 2 reception if it swapped movies with the first game? I honestly don't believe that even with the amount of charm and humor and fun parts the game has, people would have been as kind to it. They'd be much more critical of its flaws. Mostly because those who define opinions online in reviews are adults, and at the time there was always a disproportionate distaste towards the prequels among them. And I would know, ever since I was 8 years old and became a fan of Star Wars thanks to first watching The Phantom Menace, I was bullied and even banned from numerous Star Wars communities for liking the prequels as much as the original trilogy. There was only a single Star Wars community I stayed in for a long time, that being the Galactic Battlegrounds Heaven games, and that's because it happened to be full of people the same age as me, so we were actually accepting of all kinds of opinions. Of course, this is not something that affects the review in any way, but despite parts that I did enjoy, replaying LEGO Star Wars 2 made me ponder why the critical consensus is that it's better than the first one, and I don't have any other explanation than people gravitating towards it more on an emotional level simply due to the source material. The alternative would be much less kind, reviewers considering that just having more stuff means higher quality. And mind you, I'm talking about critical reception specifically. If you, as a player, absolutely adore LEGO Star Wars 2 and you think it stomps LEGO Star Wars 1 into the ground, that's fantastic. There is nothing that I would love more than you still enjoying the hell out of LEGO Star Wars 2. What I said in my video should not influence your enjoyment in any way, shape or form. And in fact, I hope that even in the case of potential disagreement, you have enjoyed watching the video and will leave a comment with your thoughts. At any rate, thank you everyone for watching.